something smells mesquite in my house. What is?
That's not here.
I mean, is that the Arizona fires?
That's a reasonable, reasonable thing to say up down here. Oh yeah, it's the trees outside.
I look at I look at my cat, who looks really like she's
guilty.
up to something. Mesquite. Hi everybody, it's the Next Real Film Board, and we're going to talk about Zompocalypse 2013, starring Steve Sarmento.
Good evening.
And Andy Nelson.
Hello.
And I'm Pete Wright. And it's our monthly special event. It's getting less special. The more we do, the less special it is. We've lost our dear friends this week. We've lost Tom Metz. We've lost Chad Stoops. We've lost Mike Evans.
You make it sound like they died or something.
They did not. They
just couldn't join us, right?
Well, they've lost them temporarily.
Okay.
Just temporary loss. We've lost them.
They wandered off in the grocery store. They're in a different aisle. We'll find them later.
Well, I guarantee you Chad is actually riding in the cart somewhere, and somebody is not pushing him, and so he's just sitting there somewhere
crying
near the butter. So we're talking about World War Z tonight. That's our latest new release fun film. And the big question I have for you gentlemen, the question has been weighing on me since I saw this film and since the last 11 movies we've done. Have we broken the film board curse? Who would like to begin?
I feel like we have. I mean, I feel like there's been a few movies here and there that we've kind of liked, but nothing that we've all like really loved. And I just speaking out of turn without really knowing what everyone's going to say, I really enjoy World War Z. And to me, it feels like this is the summer movie that I've been waiting for.
Wow. Bold words from Andy Nelson. Steve?
I wholeheartedly agree.
Woohoo! 2 for 2.
Oh, my goodness.
Now the pressure's on you.
Is it a trifecta? I had a blast watching this movie. I had a blast.
I feel like balloons are supposed to fall down.
I know. Yeah. This is great. I quite enjoyed this movie. Although I will say it was not the movie I thought it was going to be. And probably better as a result.
Had you read the book?
No, it's already on my iPad for my pending vacation.
Gotcha.
I'm very excited now, especially your review has come in quite high for this, and now that I've seen the movie, I feel like, from what I've heard, and you check me on my logic here, that the book actually could be conceived of as sort of a prequel or in the same universe as the movie, but not it's not the movie.
The book is completely taken after the zombie apocalypse has happened, after they've gotten rid of the zombies, and it's a reporter basically going around the world interviewing people about how they survived the zombie apocalypse. It's all post-apocalypse, and it's done in kind of a newspaper journalist style. Each chapter is a different interview. Fascinating book. It's an absolutely wonderful and fun read. My understanding is that they're looking to do a trilogy. I'm obviously pending the success of this film, but it's one of those ideas, I guess, that they had. Let's make this first film about the outbreak and just dealing with, trying to figure out how to stop it. I'm guessing the second film will be about stopping it, and the third film may be more like the book. I don't really know. Yeah.
Well, I would like that too.
Yeah.
Steve, have you read the book?
Yeah, actually, I just finished it on Friday afternoon before I saw the film.
Oh, well, that's timely.
Yeah, so I had started it and I had put it down for a little bit and jumped back into it because I thought, let me just wrap this up just in case there's some pieces that I want to make some connections to from the book to the film. And seeing everything with the trailers and everything, I thought, oh my gosh, this has nothing in common with this book that I'm reading. But now after seeing it, it's like a thematic sibling, because I can see now sort of which elements they drew from the book, that I can see that connection of how can you still label this World War Z when it's so different from the book, but there are some of those thematic elements that I see the connections to. So I thought I was going to really dislike this because they strayed from the source material, but I really see that it's a translation into a film, and you have to make some sacrifices. And I think they latched onto some core ideas from the book and wove those through this film, and I enjoyed that.
One of the things that we talked about early on when we first saw this movie coming out, you know, I'm fairly freakishly in love with the whole zombie kind of oeuvre. That this movie was struggling a little bit because of strife on the set, struggle on the set, handoffs and conflict between Brad Pitt and the producers, and I don't know what, if any, of that is true, but what I have heard is the movie struggled. Did you guys get any sense of that in watching the movie? Did you have that in the back of your mind as you're watching this film, that you know, did the movie suffer at all from your anticipation of that sort of on-set struggle?
It didn't for me. I mean, I went in wondering what it was that had caused such problems. Looking back, I believe that there were stories about how they pushed it back. It was supposed to be released December 2012. They pushed it back 6 months to do extensive reshoots of the finale, is my understanding. So I'm wondering if the entire bit in that last after the big plane scene, everything after that, I'm wondering if that was all entirely new material and they had to write and redo an entirely new ending. But I didn't feel that. I didn't watch it going, wow, this ending feels tacked on.
No, that's my understanding. I had read an article and they were talking about the ending. They said they had written a large sort of set piece ending, and then decided to go in a different direction and take it in what, as they described it, a sort of smaller, more personal story to wind it down. I was kind of curious what that transition point was going to be as I was watching it, and seeing how the film, you know, wraps itself up. I thought, okay, this is a nice. I'm enjoying the way that they sort of tied this story off at the end. So I didn't get a sense of, oh, it's a tacked on ending, they had to change some things. It felt like a very natural conclusion to the story.
Yeah, I'm looking online right now, and Mark Forster says the original third act, with its big battle, it was a great big zombie battle. He said was like every Hollywood movie. It's that big set piece, and it was all about bigger and louder than everything else that came before it. I think what happened was that they realized that it needed to be, they needed to reconnect with Jerry, Brad Pitt's character, and make it more of this personal finish to the end of the film.
Okay, so you know, it's interesting that you sort of say it that way, and I you know, there's a Wired article that I just read prior to recording that has an interesting angle to it. You know, the headline is you know, World War Z would have been better if it weren't a zombie movie, and in there's a clip or a quote from Brad Pitt. He's introducing the film at a screening in San Francisco, and he stands up and says, "If you think you're just about to see another zombie film, you're in for a bit of a shock. This thing is big. It's like nothing you have seen before." You know, you come off from a quote like that, and you're thinking, well, of course, I'm expecting the giant set piece, and yet I think what Mark Forster ends up delivering in the finale of this film is not that, and I think it's more compelling as a result. You know, what do you think about the personal touch in this in the film, where otherwise the first or the second act in particular is giant?
You know, I think it's important. I think it's a very important element in this film to connect to this family. When you're doing a story that is essentially on a truly a global scale, you really still need to find the protagonist of the film, and you need to have the motivation for that person to be moving through the story. I think that they really did a smart thing, focusing on not just Brad Pitt's character of Jerry, but also his family and his need to do this in order to protect his family. And, you know, my understanding is that they had done preview screenings of this, and there was actually more of the family in there, more of the eldest daughter who had there was, I guess, a bigger scene with her where she kind of snaps. It's like the psychological damage that she had been, inflicted of seeing the zombies and dealing with all of this stuff. And when they're on the ship, she actually kind of snaps and kind of goes crazy and starts hitting people. And they actually jail her in a cell, and the mom has to keep visiting. And you can see that throughout the film. You'll notice there are a good number of times where when Jerry is calling back to talk to his wife, you just see the mom with the younger sister. You don't see the older sister anywhere really until the end. And it's interesting. You can kind of tell, knowing that they had shot those scenes, that those had been cut out. I'm guessing that they just maybe didn't test well or something. But I'd be curious to see those scenes. It sounds to me like a very interesting bit of additional family drama that really helps also tie in the struggle that not just Jerry is going through of actually trying to find, the where the origin of this disease came from, but also really trying to show us how his family is also dealing with this struggle, even though they're not directly being affected by zombies, but the psychological damage that they're battling at the same time. So I think it'd be really interesting to look at that stuff.
Well, I think so too, and I think that's I think that works at the disservice of the sort of long-term sort of shelf strength of the film. Taking out that family stuff, it's like pushing it more toward the action zombie thriller when I don't think the movie wants to be that. And I certainly don't get the impression from you guys that the DNA of the material from the Max Brooks book wants it to be that the material really wants to be a character-driven film about, the destruction and rebuilding, but it's not it's less a zombie movie. I couldn't help but think that, but see this movie as more akin to, Contagion or Outbreak, and the Motaba virus from Outbreak, than 28 Days Later. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean,
totally. Yeah. If you're walking in thinking you're going to get a zombie movie, I mean, I think going back to 28 Days Later with, the introduction of the, fast zombies and things like that. It was 28 Days Later?
Yeah.
That originated that? And just the controversy around that for some of the, zombie purists. I think a lot of them would be very disappointed because it is not your, shuffling, undead, brain eaters zombie film. It's very different, and I even struggled to call it a zombie film because they're sort of a catalyst. They're almost like the MacGuffin to get these other things going on. So it's to me it's a different type of movie, and I can understand why it may not gain traction with some of those diehard zombie fans, which I think is a shame. But I also, sort of regret that it's being pushed as a zombie film because I think a lot of people will enjoy this film that think, I don't want to go see a zombie movie. It's not my type of thing. I'm not into that. And they're going to miss out on a really great film that's got some, great characters, some great things that it has to say about individuals and society in this story.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think it's even a shame in the sort of, it's not lost enough in the dramatic sort of play of the film. They use the word zombie too many times. I think they could exercise the zombie vernacular from the film, even as it's sort of the play on the disease that is sort of the way they're using it. They should just get rid of it because this is, they introduce it well in the beginning and say, this is a combination of like rabies and a disease we don't understand, but I like how different.
I like how they played with that, though. I really liked that it was just somebody in an email basically describing what he looked at this patient as this is everything I've ever seen in zombie movies. Essentially, that's what this guy is like. It's like just a dead person who's just, mindless and only wants to feast on human flesh. I mean, sure, they maybe didn't die. They got just a really sucky disease is really what happens to these people. But, I mean, it comes from an email and everybody latches on to it because we've never seen it before. They act like what we've seen in every zombie movie. I like that this movie kind of acknowledges, without acknowledging, the fact that, people are reactively calling these zombies just based on what they know of zombies. And I liked the way that kind of came about, just as like somebody threw it out in an email and everybody just kind of latched onto it.
You might say it went viral.
What? I was expecting that one.
What?
Yeah.
That's right. I got there first.
The other thing that I found interesting was, for a PG-13 film that's about zombies, there was, and I think you're going to find more gore and horror in Walking Dead, because you don't have these shuffling, decomposing bodies. I watched this going, wow, there's not a lot of gore. There's not a lot of blood. There's some jumps. There's some scares. Because of the way just the mob scenes are shot, there's only a few zombies that we really see up close. And because the time frame of this story is, again, very, very condensed over just, maybe a week, you don't have those, exposed bones and, organs falling out. I'm like, okay, they look, they're scary looking, but it's not something where I'm like, wow, this would be something, I'm thinking I would be comfortable taking my 13-year-old daughter to this, because there's not that amount of, gore and horror elements to it. And I think that's the other thing that, maybe preventing a lot of people from seeing it. Oh, it's a zombie film. It's got that stuff. I don't like seeing that. And I think people should know there's some violence to it. But again, if you're squeamish about blood, there's not a lot in this. And the zombies are not, that typical horrific, decomposed corpses walking around.
It's really just an intensity.
Yes. Yeah.
There is certainly intensity. I think that the final sequence of, I guess we're beginning some more vibrant spoilers here.
Yes.
The final sequence of him, of the search through the vault of diseases, I thought was really successfully intense. But that really, I think, is the first time we get some nice isolated close-ups of the zombies.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And looking through the windows of the gnashing, or the clapping teeth.
Yeah.
I've been trying to figure out what they look like. They're more like sort of rabbits or ferrets than. Yeah, right? I mean, it's this kind of cross between Hellraiser and, a squirrel.
The chattering teeth.
Yeah.
It's interesting how once they get the disease, it's like their teeth protrude a little more.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a really well done and intense sequence. Particularly that it was mostly light. Every time they walked into a room, the bright lights came on, and I thought that was great because they still managed to make it scary and intense. Even though it was in an area that was so sterile and clean and otherwise quite apart from the horrific deadly diseases, really quite harmless.
It was incredibly intense, that whole end sequence, just because of the stillness of everything and just all of those accidental noises, anything like that. I mean, it really got your heart pumping, and I felt that was, I mean, as a rewritten ending, wow, I thought that Forster really hit it out of the park, coming up with a tense, very intimate ending. I really enjoyed that wholly.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
I concur.
Something else about the zombies that I liked. I do like how we get these ones at the end that we can actually identify, but I do like how the zombies, for the rest of the film, it's almost, I don't want to call it a pack mentality. I don't think they were operating that way, but I did
certainly
like
swarm.
But yeah, it was a swarm. It was like this animal instinct that just drove them to feed or climb on top of each other. There was a complete disregard for anything that you would normally be cognizant of, falling from heights, smacking into something, anything that a normal brain would process, they didn't process anymore. And I found that really fascinating, something I've never seen in zombie films before. And it really struck me as a smart decision with these zombies. I really liked that difference in this film.
Let's talk about Brad. How'd Brad do? Was he believable as this former UN investigator?
As the credits were rolling, I went with a friend and we talked about it. Said, the casting was nice. I mean, you walk in this, knowing it's a Brad Pitt vehicle, but you didn't have. I mean, you buy into that of, okay, he's going to be this character. We all know it's Brad Pitt, but everybody else was cast in a way that there might be some recognizable faces, but not to the point where it becomes a distraction of like, oh, it's that guy. Oh, okay, I've seen him before. So it was nice because you could focus in on him. There were recognizable faces. You could keep track of who everyone was. But I think in casting, it was smart choices because we could really hone in on his story. And I mean, I'm not saying Oscar-worthy performances of Brad Pitt, but he kept me engaged and carried me through the story, which I think was what that character's role was meant to do. And, as a father of two daughters, and, it's like I can really relate and identify with this guy and what he's got to do to keep his family safe.
Yeah, I really connected with him. I think mostly because he did bring this family connection and this world weariness that he carried through the film, and I could see that in his face. And I think he's just at an age where he's got a few more lines on his face, and I think it worked really well to just give him a little more of a tired look, but also the nature of him having stepped away from what he did to be a family man, and how he really wanted to just have no part in any of it because he wanted to be with his family. I just found a lot of strength in that, and I really enjoyed watching him struggle to make the decisions that he had to make and everything. And I think it was a really strong performance for a genre film, essentially. But I think he really did a great job with it.
Maybe you guys can fill in a hole for me. I think, because I agree with you on on the merits of his performance. I think he did it. I really do think he did a great job. And as a dad, I found that part of the role completely believable. I loved watching him and the way he worked and communicated with Karen, his wife, played by the lovely Mireille Enos.
Mm-hmm. Mireille, you got it.
I was trying to translate to English.
Oh, okay.
I knew I'd crushed that one the first time. I loved their relationship. I particularly loved him trying to convince her that he had to do this. That when he finally comes clean and says, they're going to kick you off the boat.
Yeah.
I have to do this, or they will kick us off the boat. I thought that was great. Where it falls apart a little bit for me is I just didn't quite buy the fact that he was the guy that they had to send with all these Navy SEALs and this doctor. I just don't feel like I understood enough of his backstory as a UN investigator and the places he's been and why he is, quote unquote, the perfect person for this.
Well, I that was, seeing the previews and everything, I'm like, oh, what makes Brad Pitt this, magical, superhero character that's got to save humanity by jetting around the world?
Right.
But I thought there was enough ambiguity about what he had done in his past. He'd been places. It's not clear exactly what his role was, but it's clear that he's a worldly man. He's been in dangerous places, and his role, was to sort of shepherd this, this doctor, this young doctor to these places to help him get these places. So as he said, okay, these guys that are with us, they're hammers. Everything they see is a nail. So, they're here to do one thing, and that's it. So you need to tell me if you need something. So he was sort of the liaison to help sort of get this guy through this, apocalypse. And how do you handle with, negotiating with governments, getting into see places. So I thought he brought that experience of being in these places where their lives are at risk, there's upheaval. And so I thought there's enough ambiguity that I don't know exactly what his skills are, but there's enough that I know he's the guy that's got some unique experiences, that he's the one that's going to be able to do this, or he's the one they need to do this. And I bought that and went with it and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I probably should have let go and just bought it, but I couldn't, because here is this guy that is so special in a naval fleet off the coast of the country. They have hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers and administrators trying to keep, things together. And yet they're going to move heaven and earth to go into the city and track down Brad Pitt and his family, over the course of a night. That was such an important thing to the operation. I felt like I needed a little bit more cement.
I think also, I mean, look at it this way. This is a time when the president has been killed. The vice president is missing. A lot of people aren't around anymore. This guy, I can't remember his name, who was the UN ambassador or whatever he was, knew Brad Pitt and knew what he had done, and knew that he is somebody who could handle it. In a way, it kind of, I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but it's like in Battlestar Galactica, how the Secretary of Education ends up becoming the president because everyone else has been wiped out, right? It's like he is the person who is like the last one that they know of who they can contact, who has the skills to handle this.
That's actually a really good comparison. I think that does help.
And I think it's interesting. I think he shows it in his conversations. Like, he knows how to communicate with the people. He knows how to communicate with the pilots so that they listen to him. He knows how to communicate with the people at the WHO compound in wherever it is. I can't remember where they go to the end. He knows how to communicate with them and have the right conversations with them so they will listen to him and they will make these phone calls that he needs them to make so that they start listening to him and the things that he's saying. I think that they wrote him in a way where I buy into that with this character.
Yeah, I can see that. I still, for me, I still think it could have been a stronger connection. But the connection, the parallel to Battlestar is a good one for me. Let's see who else running down the cast. I think Daniela Cortez played Sagan. Man, that was great. Right? What? What's so funny? That wasn't funny. What she went through was not funny.
It was not funny.
No, it's not funny at all.
Nothing funny about it. You guys should be ashamed laughing at what poor Sagan went through.
It's really fantastic. I just loved all of her scenes. I think she plays this just exhausted soldier really well, and then having that happen, I just thought was really powerful, and it's horrible.
It is horrible
and sudden.
It happens so fast, and I think that is a real strength of that sequence, is how they manage to sort of everything slows down and then they accelerate through this horrific sequence of Sagan getting bit. And we've already established, I think, really well the timeline for conversion as the disease takes over once you're bit. We've repeated this whole 1,000, 2,000 Brad Pitt counting to see just how long he has before somebody actually turns. And then he makes the decision as she gets bit. He whips out his blade and cuts off her hand, and he does it so fast, and the response on her face is so beautiful as she looks in shock at this stump. I mean, it is a really, really moving sequence. I think it's a really powerful sequence. I think she does it really well. And their relationship that kind of comes out of this bond of amputation, I think ends up being a really special part of the last part of this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, especially, the conversation that they have on the plane when she asks him if he's a doctor, and he's like, he's like, no, but it's just like, yeah, I've been, trained, and it's like, okay, realizing that, all those things that we depend on, the doctors are here, all that's gone. And it's like, we have to react off of instinct and other things that we may know to get us out of this. We can't depend on all the systems that have been in place. There's not always a doctor in the house to take care of these things. We deal with it the best that we can and we move on. And I think there's that realization, and there's that trust that develops between those two. That was, again, one of those moments where it's like, okay, it's the summer blockbuster, but wow, there's so many great character moments in this film, from that on the plane between those two. And then when they get to the WHO building and, his encounter with those guys there. And I was actually concerned because I thought, oh my gosh, she's gone. They wrote her off. She left or something. I felt this great sense of loss that she was gone out of the story. And I thought, oh, we have such a great team here. And then they bring her in. I was like, oh, good. Okay.
They bring her in clean and strong and amputated, but
yes,
really nicely. I thought that was
yeah.
They did a great job there.
She's great, and just her reactions when she pulls the gun out. They're like, "No shooting. You got to be quiet." And she's just, it's such a great instinct for the character, and
yeah,
I just love those moments with her.
The doctors at the WHO office. Let's see, Peter Capaldi. Pier Francesco Favino, Ruth Nega, Moritz Bliebtro. I'm not going to translate that one.
That was really great.
Right? That was good.
You've been taking your Rosetta Stone classes, haven't you?
I particularly like these guys. Peter Capaldi and Pier Francesco Favino. I think it was particularly an interesting and compelling character when these guys were on screen, and I think the sequence that was most powerful to me was this point where they were doing the trust dance.
Yeah,
yes. And him trying to find out what is going on with his family, and not trusting them enough, and needing the bona fides from Terry on the sat phone. I think they had a really solid exchange.
It was a great moment also finding out what had happened to his family, and that exchange about families and how Brad Pitt instantly judges him about not understanding anything, only to learn that this guy is actually even worse off.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
A wonderfully powerful moment right there. I mean, you couldn't have written that better, I didn't think.
No, I don't, or executed it better. I think Brad Pitt, this is a performance from a Brad Pitt that couldn't have happened 10 years ago.
No, absolutely not. This is a Brad Pitt who definitely needed to have a family and needed to be able to latch onto that in this performance, which he does.
Yeah, and mature as an actor. I mean, I think he's just used. I think what I feel like I'm seeing here is a Brad Pitt that's not just a celebrity for good looks and celebrity's sake, and marriage gossip, but a Brad Pitt that has become a really supremely talented actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Who else stands out to you? Did anybody notice Matthew Fox in this movie?
Yes, briefly. I was like, "Wait, is that Matthew Fox?" And then I caught him again. I go, "That's a really weird casting." I thought, "Oh, maybe it must be a guy that looks like him, because if it's Matthew Fox, there'd be a clearer shot of him or something, because it was always just very quick." He was like one of the guys that sort of just, it was when they were getting on the plane or the helicopter.
Then he comes, he at the helicopter scene, he's the one who helps the family get onto the helicopter when they're in New Jersey. And then he's also on the ship later when the family's getting kicked off the boat. He's the one who goes down and talks to them.
But it was just very, very brief, very quick.
It was like a special guest credit.
Yeah,
but a lot of these faces were. A lot of them came kind of seems to have those sorts of moments. David Morse, I thought, I always loved David Morse. I think he's just fantastic actor, and it's just a really kind of just a really creepy role in this, and definitely more meat than Matthew Fox's role. But just looking at his mouth, with like
that was horrible. Teeth. Oh, that was.
Oh, but it's such
fantastic.
a real. It's moments like that where I saw it was those connections back to the book, because the book was really about how different nations, different cultures respond to, a disaster of different types, and to say, North Korea basically pulled the teeth out of every citizen in how many hours? Was it like 72 hours? Something that everybody's teeth have been pulled, because if there's no teeth, no bite. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so
smart.
It's so smart, and it's so ridiculous and insane. But it's like, oh, of course, that's what we would expect out of North Korea, and that's what it brought me back to the book, because the book does that of how these different nations respond, and that's again, I thought, it's not straight out of the book, but it's akin to, and it's that thematic, touchstone back to it. And I thought, okay, I'm in familiar territory. That's what this film is really about. It's really how does the society respond? And actually, as I was thinking about those elements of the film, it reminded me of a book that Stephen King had written way back in the early 80s, one of his few nonfiction books. He had written a book called Danse Macabre, and I think it was in 81, and he talked about sort of the history of horror films and how what's sort of in the zeitgeist of the time is how horror films key into things. And he talked about how, 50s, it was the whole nuclear era and the atomic bomb, and there was all that fear about it. So there were lots of horror films about nuclear, radiation causing, giant, insects to become huge, or, people to shrink or become, gigantic. In the 80s, there were all these teen slasher films, about, if kids are promiscuous, you're going to end up dead. It was back to that fear of, sexually transmitted diseases and AIDS, sort of those elements. And as I thought about this one of what is it that our society nowadays fears, why are zombies such a popular thing? What is it that it's keen into? And I think this film brings in several of those elements, not only sort of like biological terrorism and a virus, going well, but also how nations will react, either to come together and collaborate, or to just isolate themselves. In the case of Israel, building those walls and just sort of becoming this fortress and isolating themselves. And that's, to me, one of the great strengths of this film is, as it is part of the book as well, how do we as a world respond to large scale disasters, and how are we as humanity going to endure? What will we need to do to survive some type of coming viral epidemic outbreak?
It's a very timely sort of cultural breadcrumb. When you look at, so last year's big thing was, man, Facebook and Google are taking my information and selling it for advertising. What a violation of my privacy. And then we find out about Prism, and suddenly selling my information for advertising doesn't seem so bad, because now there's somebody listening to my phone calls, or not listening to my phone calls. Of course, that's not entirely accurate, at least as we understand it, but that somebody knows who I'm calling and where I'm calling them, right? And, that's a violation. But I'm really kind of more okay with Facebook now. And here comes World War Z, which is not just, I think, a lesson of the fear of kind of the modern world, right? Because that's really, I think, what is one of the major elements of that is reflected here, that we are terrified of all of the modernity that we've created and don't quite understand in terms of disease and infection and what could happen when systems fail. But also, as you say, there's this sense of authoritarianism and coming to terms with what it would take for us to accept the police state. And in this case, as civilization is falling, that's what it would take for us to get on a boat. That's what it would take for us to accept a major military presence. I think it's just pushing that limit of that reflection, as if this film is a mirror sort of held up for us to review this element of our cultural acceptance of today. To me, it's that point of authoritarianism and how these different nations are able to allay the masses. And I think that's really interesting. I think that makes this movie so much more compelling than your average run-and-gun zombie flick.
Well, and that goes back to how the zombies are different in this one as well, because as I thought about it, sort of how the for lack of a better term, sort of the short-term solution that they develop is, it's not a cure. It's not, an eradication of the zombies. It's how can we sort of coexist with them, because we have to become invisible to them, because, going back to that, as Andy was saying, these zombies is sort of this, swarm mentality. And this, I thought, now that as I think I understand, what they did to sort of, you've got to become, I don't know, infected with something, and you become invisible to them. And I started to think, does that mean then they don't even see each other? It's, they respond to noise. They're purely instinctual to go and bite something. But as they're moving as a swarm, are they even aware of each other's presence? Because as we see Brad Pitt, walking through the end, they may be aware of him as an obstacle to not run into him. And I think that must be the same thing possibly to each other. Because, I mean, some of the powerful visuals of that assault in Israel, of just the mountain of just scaling over each other, of I have this need to get over there and I will just claw my way to the top of whatever. I don't know what these things are, but I'm going to just have this sole single-minded purpose to get over there to bite, something. And I thought that it's a unique take on the zombie, of almost the extreme individualism, or sort of the self-interested individual that has no regard for society at all. If you think about what these zombies do, they cause the complete collapse of society because they are just so, for lack of a better word, just selfish and are out to do something and have no regard for anybody else around them. And because as I was talking to some friends that were curious about the film, they said, well, what do the zombies want? I said, all we know is that they like to go and bite people. But it's not like there's like traditional zombies. Like I said, there's not eating the brain. There's not like feasting on the flesh, because as we see early on,
it's not as if they eviscerate.
They bite and run.
Yeah,
it's like to spread the virus, to spread the selfishness, and they I thought, wow, this is a really, again, not a typical zombie film. It's, I think, I don't know, I may be layering some meaning on there, but a story of how those selfish individuals can cause the collapse of society. And I thought, oh, well, maybe this isn't even about biological warfare. It's about how, I don't know, there were some selfish individuals that almost caused the collapse of this nation because of their greed.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I think that's that. When you think of what the ultimate evil is in this film, it's, it does appear to be not the lack of, it's not cooperation, but it ends up appearing coordinated, but it's
Yes.
not coordinated. It is that extreme individualism.
It makes you, just a. I don't know if I'd call this a gaffe or anything, and not to sidetrack the conversation, but considering that looking at it that way, they're inclined to climb over something if they need to in order to get to a human to bite. It makes me wonder why would they not see a human with a disease that way, like as a rock in the road? Like I'm thinking specifically of the boy in Israel who's kind of squats down. Why don't they view him as a rock and step on him and step over him rather than purposefully avoid him?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a gaffe. I don't know if that's intentional, but
you just ruined the movie for me. Totally ruined it.
But they avoid rather than clamber over.
That's true. They do treat them differently than they treat their own kind, because they will step over, climb over, and to get interesting.
Yeah.
We'll find out in the sequel.
That's right.
What is the sequel going to be? There's an unnamed project. I need to look on Brad Pitt's on Daniela Cortez IMDb page. The unnamed project is, oh no, not hers. Who is it? Maybe it's Brad Pitt. Called World War X?
No.
World War Y?
Where was that?
I have no idea. I will be very curious to see what they do with the sequel to this. I think that there are, I mean, just like you've been bringing up, Steve, there's a lot of interesting observations of the modern world, and of this potential selfishness and all this sort of stuff that you can really layer into the story. And I'm curious where they go with that on any of the films that follow this one. It's definitely an interesting thing that they can layer into it, and I think it speaks well to the nature of zombie films right from the beginning. I shouldn't say the beginning, but when Romero first made his film, there's always been a layering of more meaning behind the zombies in the films. And I think that's always been a fascinating element to zombie films in all of the great ones. And I like that this one has that. And I like that we're able to have this conversation about this film.
Yeah, it's interesting that I mean we're talking about the about the the ultimate evil of the film, the bad guy of the film, and not so much about the monsters. Ultimately they are, particularly in that final scene in the disease vault, they are monsters. But that ends up being not a primary element of the film, and I think it's as we've said already. I think it's a mistake to conceive of this as a zombie film. It's a fantastic, I think, disease film. It's a fantastic plague film, and a much more interesting cultural reflection as a result.
But it's not a great 3D film. I did see it in I did see it in 3D because that was the time that I could get to it, and it didn't bother me, but it didn't really add anything to it. So it was one where I thought they didn't really play around with the depth, given the sort of the scale of a lot of the things. I thought, okay, there's going to be some opportunities to really have some, interesting layering and depth. And it was one where I'm like, was that? I took my glasses off. Oh, I guess that, there was nothing really 3D about it. So if you're going to see it, don't bother paying the extra for the 3D. I didn't get anything out of it. There wasn't anything that really added any, sort of visual, richness to it by seeing it in 3D.
Yeah, I saw the 3D also, again, only because that was the time slot that I could get to. And I got to agree with you. And I think the thing that I enjoyed the most in 3D, which I feel it shouldn't be, but it was the opening title sequence.
Yes, the title sequence was great in 3D. And
the layering of all of the different levels, and some of them, how the dimension that was sticking forward the most was like an out of focus slash across something. Yes. I really enjoyed the whole title sequence in 3D. It was great. And then from there, it wasn't necessary.
Well, and it confirmed on the isitreal3d.com website. It is a fake 3D film.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Sadly, but but I actually did manage to see it in 2D, and I quite liked it.
How are the opening titles?
And that's the thing, not memorable at all. I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
See, not spectacular.
Interesting.
See, Andy and I had a much richer experience.
Credit experience. And the same thing was said with the the Oz film. The credits, I think, were really standout in 3D.
Yes. The rest of it, there were a few.
Meh. Well, what else? Do we have any other key points we want to bring up, or should we flick chart it and then talk a little bit about sound?
We can do that.
Covered it all. Yeah, I think
we have.
I've hit all my stuff. I'm looking forward to the sequels. I vastly enjoyed this, and very happy to have had a chance to see it. So,
likewise, highly recommend it. It's but don't go in thinking it's a zombie film. Listen to our words. Hear me later. Listen to me now.
Now and hear me later.
And hear me later. It's it is I think it's a nice addition to Mark Forster's catalog.
Yeah, definitely is.
And all right. That's what I got. Let's flick chart this thing.
Flickchart at flickchart.com/thenextreel. You can find us there. And
what are we up to? Is this 97?
It's not quite. We're mid 90s.
We're mid 90s.
Yeah. All right. World War Z or The Sandlot. This is the best part about Flickchart.
Yes, no regard for anything.
You don't want to compare it all.
Now, the Sandlot, tell me again where the zombie apocalypse happened in that movie.
Oh, jeez. Somewhere around third base. I don't know. Oh, my gosh. It was the dog, the foaming at the dog, the mouth with the rabid dog, zombie.
Big zombie dog.
Big zombie dog. There you go.
Wow. I'm going to go.
I think it's just, maybe it's because it was so much higher than my expectations, but I think there's so much, it's one that I'm really looking forward to seeing again and just delving into these characters in this story again. So World War Z.
Yeah, me too.
All right. World War Z or Zero Dark 30.
Oh.
I'm World War Z, I think.
Really?
I think really just for the pure, it's a big, ambitious zombie film, and I just love the globe-trotting aspect of it, and I really had fun watching this one. And Zero Dark 30, don't get me wrong, it's an absolute genius film. I think it's just spot on, perfect. But World War Z is just something that I could find myself watching time and time again.
Yeah, okay.
That's tough because I mean I saw Zero Dark 30. I saw that twice in the theater. Saw it again on DVD. Have loved it every single time. It's just such a strong, but it's one that I think. Yeah, okay. I think as far as enjoyment and repeated viewing, I'm probably going to come back to World War Z more often. And I think Zero Dark 30 has the strength in its time, and I think there'll be a little bit more timelessness to World War Z, perhaps. Okay.
Okay.
Reluctantly.
All right.
Reluctantly, he agrees. World War Z or The Treasure of the Sierra Madre?
Oh, Andy, I can't wait to hear what you say.
I have to go with Sierra Madre on this
yes, you have to. That's just a masterpiece.
I think I've lost that argument so many times.
Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Brad Pitt against Brad Pitt. World War Z or Moneyball?
Moneyball. Hands down, baby. I love that movie.
Oh, no.
I do too.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
And we don't have to feel guilty because it's also Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
That's right.
And it's good, solid performances in both films.
We're supporting him regardless.
Yes.
World War Z or The Bank Job? I think I would go World War Z. I think I love The Bank Job, but again, it's just this globe-trotting nature of the movie and just the zombies, and it has great moments all through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we got that. Let's see. We're at all right. I guess that's it. We're at number 21 on Flickchart.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place for it.
Yeah.
Moving up. Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I am too. That's good. I can see that.
It's a fun film, and I think it will stand up, and I think it's definitely a good one to fit in with the genre of the zombie film.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. Some a fresh take on that. Keeps that genre alive. Does something new with it. And I was really surprised how smart this film was for sort of the summer blockbuster tentpole. There was just a lot to it.
Yeah.
So far, we look at the big summer. What are the other big summer movies? We saw
all the ones that Andy hates.
All the other movies Andy hates, plus this one.
I loved This Is the End.
Yes, I haven't seen that one.
Hold on a second. Because I seem to recall, and this may have been off recording, but Andy's saying he cannot stand Seth Rogen. That he didn't want to even.
Oh, he's off and on the record. He's been.
I totally did say that, and it got such good reviews that I couldn't avoid it. Like word of mouth, everything I heard. I was like, I'm going to have to go see this movie, and I really enjoyed it. So wasn't expecting it to, but I did.
I can't wait to see it. You're not the only person I've heard say. I was at dinner the other night. And the waitress comes up and says, "Oh my gosh, have you seen this movie?" Out of the blue, it's absolutely fantastic. She says,
"Yeah."
And I tend to take the advice of the waitstaff at popular restaurants,
as one should.
Mm-hmm.
One should.
You haven't seen it yet, Steve?
No, I have not seen it yet because I don't. Yeah, and it's been getting great reviews. It's one where I'm like, oh, really? Well, okay. I may reluctantly go and
you're gonna see it
than I expect,
and then you're gonna want to put it right up on your shelf, right next to your director's cut of the Green Hornet. Let's move on to, because we haven't talked to you about Man of Steel, and in particular, if I understand, you didn't see World War Z in Atmos, right? You managed to get to Man of Steel in the Dolby Atmos sound system. I have not seen a film in this using this sound, and Andy, I believe, has not. You're it.
Yeah.
Tell us what you thought.
I didn't know I was seeing a Dolby Atmos film until I was surprised. They were little posters they were giving away for like kids to take home, and at the bottom it said like Dolby Atmos. I'm like, wow, yeah, rub it in, whatever. You're showing it someplace else. And I sit down and this huge sound, Dolby Atmos. I was like, oh, I get to see a film in Dolby Atmos. They're going to be so jealous.
and true, we're very jealous.
I mean, this was not a film where I think there was a lot of refined sound work because there was just so much that was just loud all across the board. There were some interesting moments though where, particularly when Zod takes over sort of the broadcasts of the TVs, the sound would sort of move around the theater. So when it was broadcast, and it was, I think, in the Kent household.
Wait, are you talking about when he took over RSS feeds?
Yeah, and everything. It was on the TV. It was everywhere.
So
yes.
Dumb.
He's so from the TVs, it was projected like just at the front of the theater, like you were watching the TV. The sound's coming from there, and then when it went to sort of like the Situation Room, it was all around the theater. It was just this voice, so like the voice of God coming into the theater, speaking from everywhere. And so that was one of the moments where I thought, wow, there's some placement of sound going on here that. Not the precision that I expected from what I've heard about, I think it's like 64 different speakers and they can really move sound around. There wasn't a lot that was noticeable. So maybe because it was not a distraction, but again, there was not a lot that called attention to itself. So, and I think it's because it was, again, everything was loud. We're going to be, slammed through another building. It's going to be a loud explosion. Oh, Zod's going to do stuff. It's going to be loud. But there was some richness to the sound. So I'm looking forward to seeing something else there that maybe has sort of a different range of sound to it, but
wider variety maybe.
Sort of get the sense that this is one of the early Dolby Atmos films, and then there's I have this kind of image in the back of my mind of these sound engineers who are, cutting their teeth on some very new technology, and I think learning to mix 64 independent channels.
Yes. I think so. I'm looking forward to seeing what, I think there's going to be a film that comes out that's going to do something really innovative with it. So I'm looking forward to that of, really understanding the tools, what they can do with it, and how that's going to be effective in telling the story.
Unfortunately, it will also be 184 frames per second, HD, IMAX, 7D.
So I am counting on the fact that, I'm wondering if Desolation of Smog is going to be an Atmos on that theater. I don't know if that's one that has the 48 frames per second or not. So I'll have to... if I tell you guys I'm going to the theater to go see it, and then you hear my head exploded, then it may have been the 96 frames and the 1,000 channels of sound that did it to me.
So at no point during the great Superman scream did any of the audience members' ears start to bleed in the Atmos?
Not that I noticed. That I noticed, but it was again. It did feel full, it was definitely immersed in sound. And as I said, there was that particular scene where I did notice where they really played around with sort of placement of sound, which was nice. It added an extra dimension to that of sort of bringing us into it. But again, not probably the most ideal film for refined sound work. Not to discredit their work on that film or anything, but in terms of hearing descriptions of, we can place a sound anywhere in the theater, how would you do that? I mean, if a pin drops and you want it to be over here, over there, they can do that, but there weren't opportunities for that here.
Right. It looks like, so the 2013 release schedule, there are obviously a lot of Dolby Atmos movies that are now, have now hit. Oblivion, Iron Man 3 was Atmos, Star Trek Into Darkness Epic. The next round, we've got Monsters University, The Heat, Mr. Go, The Congress, Pacific Rim will probably be a good one to check out.
That'll probably be the next one in there.
The Wolverine, Percy Jackson, The Sea of Monsters, Elysium, check me on this, gents, but that is seriously the loudest trailer in every theater I've seen. It is obscenely loud. Insidious Chapter 2, that's a big one for Andy. Lost Place, Gravity.
That will be interesting.
The comments from the people behind me, though, during the trailer, that was before World War Z.
Yeah.
And it starts, it's like George Clooney and Sandra Bullock floating in space, talking about the beautiful sunrise and all this stuff. And the guys behind me were just like, what am I watching? And then it exploded and everything went crazy. But it was just like that for me defined so well.
That's good. think the last batch after that one on Solitaire, Young Detective D, Rise of the Sea Dragon, and then The White Storm. That's the current list at Dolby Atmos Movies, which you can find on Dolby.com. And then there is also an Atmos theater locator where you can add your zip code and find out a theater closest to you. And that's I'll put the link in the show notes for that. Excellent. And is there one near me? I'm really sweating it now because I'm it's really lame selections.
Yeah.
Well, all those hipsters in the Pacific Northwest don't like to have their sound.
Now, let me just tell you, none of these theaters are hipster hotbeds. There are much more hipstery areas of this town. They've chosen the most obscure parts of town.
That's funny.
Oh, maybe the hipsters are demanding refined sound for their films.
I'm not even kidding. There isn't one in Oregon. There is the nearest one is across the border in Vancouver, Washington. Vancouver, Washington, I love you. The word that the vernacular when describing that you have to go to Vancouver, and this is for people who live there that are dear friends of mine. They call their town Vantucky. Not me. They call they're allowed to do that because they live there. I'm just the messenger, and all of the nearest theaters, the top 8. Are in Vancouver, Washington, Everett, Washington, Linwood, Washington. Those are in Seattle and Sacramento. Sacramento?
That's a hike, yeah.
Yeah.
That's 483 miles from my house.
That's right around the corner.
Or Folsom, California. The 10th is Folsom, California. I'm chagrined and insulted by Dolby's rollout of this.
It has been slow. I was surprised. I didn't even know that they brought it to Arizona yet, so it was nice to hear.
A lot of nerve, Dolby. You just made the list, the nemesis list.
Oh, wow! Watch out, Dolby.
Have we? I don't want to jump ahead, Andrew, but have we? Do we have a next month's pick on the list?
Nope. I think we're going to be deciding shortly.
Excellent.
Oh, okay.
Very excited about it. So none of us know. It's a big secret. And so we will be deciding that shortly. But for everybody else, thanks for joining us. Head out to thenextreel.com and just click on the film board there, and you can see all the past episodes that we've done of the film board. You can catch our hit episode on Now You See Me last month. Extremely popular. And so you can check out the film board. You can learn more about us. You can listen to the regular weekly show, and make sure you subscribe in iTunes and leave us nice comments because it really helps other people discover the show. We so appreciate that. Anything else I'm missing for old news, gents?
I think you hit it all there.
Got it covered, Governor.
Steve Sarmento, thank you so much, brother, as always.
Thank you.
And Andy, I think it's fair to say I have had enough of you today.
I think it is fair to say.
All right. On that note, I'm going to bed.
Good night.
I'm going to go gnaw on some zombie flesh.